Welcome to Let Me Know How It Is, a pop culture podcast about animation, TV, movies, comics, and more. We're reviewing the first 3 episodes of Genndy Tartakovsky's latest animated series, Unicorn Warriors Eternal. I'm Zach Slater.
I'm Frank Melman.
And I'm Clifton.
All right, listeners, this is your spoiler alert. We're going deep into here, so if you don't care about spoilers or that sort of thing, by all means, carry on with this episode. But if you do care, and you haven't seen the first 3 episodes, pause here and check them out. We'll be here when you get back. Unicorn Warriors Eternal airs midnight, 12 a.m. Thursday nights, Friday morning on Adult Swim, and next day availability on HBO Max, or just Max, I suppose. The first episode can also be found for free on Adult Swim's YouTube as well. So, Clifton, I'm going to toss it to you if you want to read really quick the premise that Warner Discovery released before the episodes came out.
All right. Unicorn Warriors Eternal. An evil force is looming across the dark, thick-aired streets of Industrial Revolution London when a group of heroes dubbed Unicorn are accidentally awakened in the bodies of teenagers instead of adult hosts they've embodied in the past. Melinda, a powerful sorceress, Sang, a cosmic monk, and Edrin, a warrior elf. With distorted memories and their magical abilities weakened and fragmented, the trio must work together with help from their steam-powered robot Copernicus to unravel the mysteries of their pasts and present that will reveal their path to defeating a timeless threat.
All right, cool. So we're going to do the first 3 episodes here. So when it premiered, they ran the first 2 at once. And then it's aired one other episode since at the time of this recording. So I will go ahead and I'll do a synopsis of the first episode. First episode titled Awakening Part 1. It opens with Sang, the monk character floating in the magic realm. Sang sees like a greenish fire dragon emerge and he says, "I've found it." We then cut to ancient Egypt where the warriors are all fighting said dragon. They defeat it, but Melinda gets wounded. Then Merlin the magician arrives through a portal and brings Copernicus, the steampunk robot, with him. And Merlin says that they've defeated the evil, but it's going to one day return, and so the warrior souls must also return as well. So Copernicus, who's from the 19th century future, will reawaken their spirits when the time comes they are needed. And then they see a unicorn in the distance, and Merlin takes it as a good omen that the magical realms are on their side. Then we see a montage of all the spirits being reawakened, different warriors throughout the ages. And then we finally land in London, 1890, which is when the show, at least so far, takes place. Copernicus is awakened by some grave diggers. We don't know why Copernicus is in a grave or for how long, but in any event, these grave diggers turn out they're also robots and they're trying to destroy Copernicus. And so he fights them off, and then he flies off and finds Emma, who's a blonde teenager on the day of her wedding. And then Copernicus interrupts the wedding and casts a spell that transforms Emma into Melinda. And immediately her memory's kind of wonky. And it's kind of wonky as far as who she was prior to the transformation and who she is now. It's a little like muddled. So she leaves. Copernicus follows. And he's trying to remind Melinda now of who she is and the mission. And the episode ends with Melinda and Copernicus riding off into the fog to find Sang and Edred. That's broadly the first episode.
Okay.
So, as I'll kick us off, and then you guys can jump in with your thoughts. As is with all Genndy Tartakovsky things, I mean, the thing that hits me a lot with this is mood.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very moody. There's a lot of slow action and people doing a lot of not silent bits, but no talking bits where you're seeing characters kind of manipulating things and doing things and building a lot of tension.
A lot of business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what'd you guys think?
I think it does a really good job of getting you into what the meat of it's about, from the beginning. I thought there was a nice bit of setup, at a moment where I'm like, wait a minute, is this going on? I wasn't sure exactly when it, when you're watching it, I was had a momentary oh, this is happening now, and this happened before, and therefore, because I didn't know anything about the premise before I went into it, other than the one image that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of went into it blind, and then it's all right, I'll pick it up as I go.
Okay.
But I think it does a really good job of putting you in quickly to what exactly is going on, and then the nods to who might have been these eternal warriors before, like the Joan of Arc bit I thought was nice.
Right.
Yeah, I think the sort of the transformation stuff is all really cool. That montage I really dug, where you saw like a Viking get transformed into one of the warriors, and then there's like, oh man, I don't know, like a knight somewhere, and then there's like a Native American in there. And it's just kind of neat how, like, I like the character design aspect of it, where it was the one character you saw, like the Viking, but then you saw that character get like a mashup of like Edred or something like that, where you saw like the blue skin or the white hair. Like every character had kind of like these anchors that they assigned to all the other versions.
Right, like the orange. Like the orange and red eyes, like the gradient eyes in the Sang character.
Yeah.
It was a lot of information for sure. And I hadn't read the synopsis before either. I went in completely blind, having only seen like a poster image. And I guess like the 30-second, I did see the 30-second teaser at one point, I think. But that didn't give away much of plot. It just showed, kind of the setting and vibe of it all. I definitely didn't know where it was going to go that fast, where we jump from, over like 1,000 years, I guess, maybe more in that first like opening scene where we see all these different versions of them. Cause I didn't know like the reincarnation bit was going to be a thing. And that is like the thrust of it, as far as we can tell from what we've seen in these episodes. Yeah. It was a lot of information at first. It was a lot.
Yeah. It is a lot of information while also being like very lean. At the same time,
Right. Yeah, like the exposition's not heavy. It's like they could talk to you. They could talk you through all of this.
Right.
And they don't at all. There's like in the first few minutes there is. I mean, they're explaining the premise, the situation that these characters are in, but overall the episode is not talky. I mean, like it's got so many moments of quiet that it's surprisingly quiet when you think of animation, because I mean normally these characters are kind of by themselves, but in other animation they'd be talking to themselves because they'd want to fill that space with noise, with dialogue. They don't like, in a lot of animation, they don't like to let things just visually explain themselves, which they should, because it's a visual medium.
Yeah.
But they just don't. They just, it's not that common that you just have like a character by themselves, not talking, not doing anything, and you're just watching them.
Yeah. You're just seeing what they're up to by like, what tool they're using, or there's a lot of that. Like when sort of like the mysterious woman with the green eyes, like finds the wreckage of her robots after Copernicus, like kind of like runs roughshod on all of them. And she just like comes up and she like picks up the head and like puts the head back on and takes a pipe out from like the back of one of the robots and starts like using it as a ratchet on a part. You have like no idea like what she's doing other than like it appears like she's kind of putting it back together.
Right.
But that sequence is like, I mean, it's not like a long sequence, but like it goes on for a couple of seconds where there's like, you're just watching this thing unfold, and it's kind of cool. It's one of the things he does really, really well. I mean, like you said, like, animation doesn't do it a ton, but, I think that's one of the things he's kind of known for, is to just like, sort of let the stillness, and the quiet sort of, like drive.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely remember it from Samurai Jack episodes, which are, again, it's a character by himself a lot, but he doesn't talk to himself because he's remarkably, he's known for being a man of few words character.
Yeah.
So you do get that in some other Genndy stuff, the like just kind of introspective animation, I would say.
Yeah, from right off the bat, I was trying to get a hook into what, from the design. Like one thing I did like was the sketch stuff at the end over the credits I thought was nice. But at the same time, when they were showing the beginning sequence of the various characters, and there were the various touchstones throughout the times that they were, reborn or reincarnated. Off of Melinda, I sort of got a Raven from Teen Titans sort of vibe.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I didn't, that was cool. I liked that. I thought Copernicus reminded me of like there was I guess it was like the mid 90s. Neil Gaiman had a comic from Techno Comics, a company that doesn't exist anymore,
right?
Called Mr. Hero, the Pneumatic Man.
Okay.
Which was fairly similar. You know, kind of a wind-uppy, kind of a, what's the character from the Oz books? Was it TikTok? TikTok kind of reminded me of that.
Oz, yep.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking for him.
Yeah, but the if I remember, I've only read a couple issues of the Pneumatic Man stuff from Neil Gaiman, and it was kind of he was, if I remember correctly, he was a wind-up kind of robot, but he was also a pugilist, like a you know, like mixing like early Victorian boxer type,
right?
You know, had the kind of the handlebar mustache and all that stuff.
Looked like Teddy Roosevelt with boxing gloves on.
Yeah, a little bit.
which very well probably happened. I'm sure.
Yeah, which is fine. I have no problem with that. I'm a fan of Teddy's, so yeah, it was. I liked the design sense for most of the characters. I thought each of them having their own little thing, you know, helped, you know, tie together them universally as to what they would be, you know, and it would make them, I'm sure would make them over the centuries try to recognize each other a little better, but not necessarily this time around.
I like that you're going on sort of like these characters reminded me of this and that, because Copernicus for me was like R2D2.
Oh, okay.
I got a lot of R2D2 vibes. It's like in one way we're like R2D2 like always had like gadgets.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. You know, like it was always like hacking the computer to stop the trash compactor.
Mm-hmm.
But then like later on, like you saw that, you know, he had like rocket booster,
right.
You know, stuff like that. So I mean, Copernicus is definitely like that, where like he turns into like a motorcycle at one point and stuff,
and a boat,
and a boat, right?
Also, like insofar that like R2 also doesn't talk, and it's just sort of like conveying emotion and sort of character and how it's feeling, what it's saying, sort of just like through beeps and boops and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And Copernicus was a lot through like, you know, just sort of like the sound of like a steampunky robot moving, like conveyed sort of like the emotion, which I thought was kind of cool. So,
well, I liked the fact that when he fought, like I thought and again, it was one of the things where almost like as soon as I saw it, I was like, well, that's really clever. And then I also had the moment of like, well, that's really, it makes sense. Was the cannonball bit when he's fighting the robots.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, of course. That would be the, you know, the standard probably cannon, you know, if he had cannons, that would be the thing that he would use. So I thought that was really, you know, equally clever and also like, duh, well, yeah, what else would he have? You know, for the time, I thought that was fine. And then taking the snapshots, that was something else I wrote in my notes I thought was pretty cool. Was just the, like, his head being, was it like his head being a camera, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, like his eyes. His eyes were like camera lenses or something. Yeah, because you saw like the aperture thing shut, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a cool thing as well.
I like when sort of the green-eyed woman is getting the report from her robots.
Right.
That it's like it's a film projector.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. That was really nice.
It pops out of his back.
Yeah. No, I like that
Old
quite a bit.
black and white.
Yeah.
No, I thought that was really cool. Really well done. Again, it was one of those, oh yeah, that makes, you know, pretty good sense again that would happen. Sure. Yeah, a lot of both colliding of, the idea of magic and science sort of like butting up against one another at the same time as, the wonders, quote unquote, of Victorian age, right?
Yeah.
All that stuff sort of colliding, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, the description sells it as Industrial Revolution London, but it's clearly steampunk London because it's a lot of technologies that do not exist. So it's a very fantasy setting already for a science versus magic fight to happen in.
Mm-hmm. Well, when they see the sign for the Automan, I thought that I immediately was like automaton. Yeah. Thought that was a clever bit too, but and the idea is again, I have, just for people listening, I have not seen the third episode. So when we get to that, I will be hearing about it fresh and then commenting and speculating. But I just thought it was interesting that, as we learn more about the characters individually, where they may or may have, come from. I thought was kind of, again, I thought a lot of like the visual imagery and stuff I thought was really good. But I thought the idea of just trying to get to like, basic origin stuff for people was well done as well.
I was struck a lot by also how like comparing it to other animated shows, I feel like this entire episode would have been the first 6 to 10 minutes of like a 2-part pilot.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like everything that this episode occupies would have just been done really, really quick. You know, and I like sort of, that we're taking the long way on things and we're building, you know, very, 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 methodically to things in some way, because it is, you know, it's, unless you've seen it, it's, I can't really quite describe sort of like the perplexing feeling I had watching it, where information's thrown at you in a way you're like, what does this mean? What does that mean? What does this mean? And like,
Right.
you don't get like really answers to anything.
Not right away, no.
You know?
No.
And I say that like not as a criticism at all. Like I'm saying that like just, you know, like there's probably something that's going to come up more and more this episode that like, it feels all intentional to me. That like,
Right.
no, we're going to take our time.
Right.
And, you know, and you're confused, but we want you to be confused.
I think it's almost done in a way that you're almost in the same boat that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
That as the characters emerge and they have to sort of reconcile that, okay, they have, you know, relationships, or they've met each other, or they've been through adventures or whatever together. There's also this thing of, well, you know, they're not on like solid ground or sure footing either.
Right.
And as a viewer, that's where you're going to be for a while, which I'm fine with. I don't need everything spoon fed. I don't need everything laid out for me. I'm more than willing to watch it and find out where it goes.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's a good observation. Like Memento.
A little bit. Yeah.
Backwards puts you in how the character feels.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I like also that it's stripped down in a way that, like, you know, we have, it appears that like our main cast is going to be 4 characters. And this one, like, very heavily just revolves around 2 of them. Mm-hmm. You know, Melinda and Copernicus, who, you know, again, doesn't speak ever, you know. Like,
right.
just, you know, his action is just to follow her around in this one and sort of like try and get her like up to speed on things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, parts of me, you know, in watching it, it seemed a little, Doom Patrol-ish, a little bit Fantastic Four thrown in.
Okay.
You know, I had a little moments of those, you know, in battle scenes. I was like, oh, okay, I can see where this, you know, sort of works. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, again, I'm not saying that it's totally one thing or the other, but I was like, oh, okay, this feels a little this, and this feels like, you know, you got a guy and a robot and and an energy lady. You know, I'm like, you know, the Doom Patrol, and then, like I said, then when just the four imagery of the 4 of them together, you know, conjures up Fantastic Four. But yeah, like I said, there was a lot of like touchstone-y stuff, but it never felt to me like it was something where I was like, oh, I can completely see exactly where the through line was. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can see where someone gets all of their inspiration from, and this felt a lot more like it was bits and pieces as opposed to just chunks of stuff.
Right. Yeah. So I guess a little bit of background before we move on to episode 2 is that apparently this is a show that Genndy had been pitching like since he started his career. Like, you know, back in like in the Hanna-Barbera days, you know, when he was working on Dexter and like Powerpuff and stuff like that. Like, this is a show he pitched around that time, and for whatever reason, just, you know, never got traction, never got picked up, you know, and other things. You know, he sold other things along the way, like, you know, doing the Star Wars stuff and doing Jack and doing, you know, Symbiotic Titan.
You did mention 2 Stupid Dogs from his Hanna-Barbera days.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
It wasn't his show, but he did work on it.
Right.
It cracked me up in those back in the day.
So, yeah, and then it's just like, you know, and then of course, like this idea just gets sort of like refined a little bit over time, because he was saying he's been doing a lot of press for this coming out. And, you know, one of the things I caught him that I thought was interesting was that, you know, things had come out in the intervening years that were sort of like similar or like kind of close to ideas he had. So it caused him to sort of revisit it and make little changes of things that he thought would now be kind of like cliche. Because like, I guess something, and he wasn't specific, but I guess like something, you know, pretty famous or pretty successful came out.
Right.
That he was just like, well, people would just compare it to this thing now. So he, you know, would he would sort of massage it a little bit,
Right.
I guess, over the years.
Well, steampunk in general has certainly come and gone
Yeah.
in that amount of time.
Mhm.
To the point where I'm like, my first instinct is steampunk, really? Like,
Mhm.
do we need steampunk now?
Right.
I'm still there. Like, I think you can do interesting stuff with it, but that's just like a general, like, you know, first reaction I have when I see it is just because like I remember it sounds like he had this idea before like the steampunk 8A that I started in the early 2000s, like 2004 or 5 was the anime Steam Boy, which I think like floodgates opened after that. So, I mean, I feel like that might be one of the things he's talking about is that partly that he had this idea at the time that was this new thing that people weren't doing, and then it was everywhere.
Right.
So now he has to realize, is he really in love with that thing? Is that thing really worth doing now? And I think he thinks it is. So
Right.
I'll hang around and see where it goes.
Yeah. I guess one of the other notable things, you know, like I guess we'll hit some production tidbits here and there when we can, but I think the thing that caught me in the credits when I'm watching the first episode is he storyboarded this whole thing.
Oh yeah,
the whole episode was storyboarded by him. And I mean, like, that's uncommon for it to be done by one person, like a full 30-minute episode.
right.
And then what's more is, you know, I saw him, he had done, an interview with Wired or something like that. I saw on YouTube, and he was running through a little bit like his process, and he actually storyboarded it twice. Cause like he has like a notebook that he does like roughs on, and he's like, I just do it this way. I just kind of think about the shot and telling the story this way. And I don't have to worry about like getting the look of the character kind of like accurate. It's just sort of like for me, like to work it out a bit. And then he does like the proper like storyboard, which is, you know, the actual like breakdown of shot for shot and sequence for sequence of the episode that ends up going to the overseas studios that start animating to that. You know, and I just thought, like, that's crazy. That's
right.
You know, I mean, typically an episode, for listeners that may not be familiar with animation process, typically a full 30-minute episode will be done by 3 artists, right? And they'll sort of break down like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, usually, right?
One thing I thought was interesting was, while it's not spelled out in the montage of the transformation, I did think it was interesting that Melinda's transformation takes place in a church at the time, which would have been like, holy crap, she might be an open demon or something.
Right.
And then the idea of how much it can affect or transform a person's personality, that on her wedding day, she rejects, her wedding. Basically, that's how much of it, how deep it can go, is the fact that they're tapping into something that's so, no pun, eternal, that they basically, that's how much it kind of writes over their personality. It also reminded me a little bit of some stuff in Angel, just about how quickly a character can change when they're basically imbued with something that's bigger than them.
Okay.
That was just something I thought about when watching it. I was like, wow, this is like, there's a reason why this was set on her wedding day in a church, as opposed to like, she's at school or whatever. There's a bigger reason. That was the thing that I took away from it, was something that, really wanted to hit that. No, they're kind of no longer the person they were. But of course, that's not the case with her.
No, that's a good observation. Also like the playing against like white against black too. Is something that Genndy does a lot of too. Like, I mean, Samurai Jack was kind of like, look at Aku's like an all black,
right?
Character with very, very little color except like his eye, the fire eyes and stuff like that. And Jack is basically like he's draped in a white, kimono the whole time.
Sure. And the other characters in the season 5 of Samurai Jack, the women, with Aku, like it's definitely reminiscent. Melinda's definitely reminiscent of that, like the kind of flowing black energy all the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that, Clifton. You're right. Yeah.
And there's an episode of Samurai Jack versus the ninja that's just like, I mean, it's quite literally like white versus black. Like it's all, the stylized, just like almost like spy versus spy sequence in that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I had about the first episode was the parasol lady. That's what I kept calling her in my head. Was the parasol lady trying to prevent what was going on, or was she trying to hijack what was going on?
The green-eyed lady?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like trying to use it for her own. Again, like I haven't seen episode 3, so I don't know.
Okay.
But but you can tell me. But anyway, that was my the only other observation I had was that. So.
All right. So Awakening Part 2. This is episode 2. Picks up where episode 1 leaves off. Melinda and Copernicus land on the shore of a boarding school that's in ruins. The site feels kind of familiar to Melinda, and inside there's a gang of young boys who were left behind when the school was shut down, and they've kind of created like a gang, right? And the boys threaten Melinda and Copernicus. Copernicus transforms the youngest boy, Alfie, into Sang. And then Alfie gets carried off to the magic realm where he meets Sang's soul, where he's told that their souls are entwined forever and that the future has been altered. Alfie, now Sang, joins Melinda and Copernicus in fighting off the gang. Together, the three fly to London, where they encounter a street magician named Dimitri, who then is spell transformed into the third warrior, Edred. And then while there, a giant kind of zombie elephant starts to attack London, sent by the mysterious woman with the green eyes, the parasol lady, Frank, that you were talking about.
Right.
The warriors work together to fight off the elephant. Winston, who is Melinda's fiance, has tracked Melinda down, but ends up being hurt or killed during the battle at the very end. The episode ends with the elephant being defeated and Melinda flying off alone, with the other warriors following after her. So the thing that got me here is I think it's so cool that this show really, like, I'm seeing things that Genndy developed throughout his career in other shows, and little nods and little things, because like the elephant reminded me so much of a sequence in Primal where there's like a sickly dinosaur that's coming after them, that they're fighting like a plagued dinosaur, and you know, just visually the elephant kind of reminded, because there's like patches of like skin missing where you're seeing like bone and stuff like that, and just like visually they just looked very similar, and I thought that it was kind of cool. But what'd you guys think?
I liked the moodiness setting overall. It's a very gloomy episode. And where they are in the real world. And then you get the flashbacks that are more colorful, but like, and there's the soccer flashback, which I thought was funny. I did enjoy the soccer animation. It's definitely over the top. There's a lot of this style that I can't quite place because it doesn't look like Gendy's normal, like character design styles. Or animation. And I feel like he's referencing something, and I should be able to tell what it is, but I just haven't been able to place it yet.
Okay.
Something old for sure. But yeah, just some of the character designs, I haven't been able to place what his references are drawing from, but there's something there. I don't know if it's like Astro Boy. I don't know if it's Tezuka. There's something there in the style, but like the school scene, I like it not. It's just like gloomy and green and everything. And that way, when Alfie gets the awakening himself to become Sang and goes to the cosmic world, you just get these like juxtapositions. Like you get these contrasts between like this gloomy, like ruined gray green school they're in, and like the rainbow oranges and purples in this cosmic realm that his mind is in, and his body's in the present. And then you just keep getting that like compare and contrast as we're seeing which world he's in. Are we following his body in the physical world? Or are we following his mind in the cosmic world? And I thought it was a really nice, like, drastic difference, which I liked. The little gang I thought was funny because the gang of the kids is like the Droogs from Clockwork Orange. And Mick, the leader of their gang, I think is straight up Alex. I think is straight up McDowell in Clockwork Orange. He's just missing the white suit, like the jumpsuit. But they all could have been having him. I went a different way. I was like, I'm always like when it's a British kid, when Mick, I'm like, is it Mick Jagger? Right. Yeah, or Mick Jones from Clash. Yeah. Like there's different Micks.
Yeah. But that was the one I was like, oh, maybe that's what they're going for. But yeah, I like the little gang. I immediately was saying, I mean, obviously, when he's first introduced in the first episode, I didn't quite get the vibe of this, but in the second one, with the eyes, it seemed I kept getting very much the vibe in my head of Sight Beyond Sight.
Lion-O.
Yeah, of Lion-O.
Right.
That was what I kept having was Sight Beyond Sight. Seeing possible futures or possible paths for them. I like the kind of, I always like the kind of equally wise, equally not all there characters. I always like those. So I thought that's always fun with saying. I thought that was a good bit.
It answers the question why he's like upside down in the promotional art that came out. We're like, why is that kid upside down? All right. Like, and then it's just kind of cool. Like, I like how quick he takes to Sang's powers, but at the same time, he's like, can't control it, /is childlike with it. You know what I mean? And sort of like in awe of it all. Like, I really dug that. There's
definitely a bit of streetwise meets cosmic wise, which I liked also. I thought that was a nice contrast. The idea of, just aware of how things work, on a basic level, but at the same time, about to be given a whole lot of, a crash course in what how everything works.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I thought was, again, kind of a cool bit. And the idea of being just an abandoned thing in the universe, just being like, Ben, he's so little, he's such a small kid. Just the idea of, again, versus playing it off the idea of, I'm gonna fill your tiny head with the vastness of everything, which I thought was a really, really cool bit as well. So.
I like how he fights too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I liked that it was sort of, he's everywhere at once. While not being aggressive. It's like kind of defensive, right? But he's also like completely like outmaneuvering them and outsmarting them in every way. Like, like
my mind, it was the way that I kind of always imagined if they ever, a live action Dove, like Don Hall would have been, which would have been much more like, no, I'm not going to throw a punch, but I'm going to do all these other things that's going to.
Okay. You went with Dove. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, that's where I went with it.
It was a Spike Spiegel fight. From Cowboy Bebop.
Okay. I went with it's how I would imagine. You remember in Batman Beyond with the future Justice League, and the Green Lantern there is like a little kid. Also, like that's how I imagine like the Green Lantern in that guy's hands would be like. Just sort of be like it wouldn't wield itself in the way that Hal or John Stewart did. Like it would be used in sort of like this, exact way.
Right. A lot more zen, right? Yeah, no, that's what I could see that, sure.
But yeah, Clifton, so kind of going off of the character design aspect, maybe worth pointing out over here that he is using, as far as I know, a new character designer for these shows. So Steven DeStefano is the character designer on these. I know him from Cuphead, from the Cuphead show. He's head designer on that. So this is like the first time like Genndy's had him as like lead designer. Typically it's been Paul Rudish, who's been doing all of the lead character designs in all of in the previous shows that he's been working on. So I'm curious if it's also like just like reference that you haven't been able to pick, focus on just yet, but also like how much of it is also just somebody else, maybe having a different draftsman type,
right.
Draftsmanship type.
He's definitely drawn to old-timey influences. That I can tell.
I don't know why I got you were saying Astro Boy, right, Clifton? Right. I got a little Betty Boop out of it for some reason.
Like Melinda's eyes are definitely Betty Boop eyes.
Yeah, that was one that I kept taking away from, was like Betty Boop. It was like, okay. Yeah.
And I guess the other like real change as well is Frank, you may not know this guy's name. Clifton, you do for sure. No Scott Wills on this show.
Okay, for backgrounds.
Yeah, no Scott. So typically Scott Wills has been the art director for every one of Genndy's projects. And this is the first time. It may just be that he has two shows going at once. Because Primal, was finished up not too terribly long ago. Compared to when this one started. So it may have been it may have been that he had to sort of like stagger the crew a little bit. I don't know. But you know, I did notice. I noticed that Scott Wills was not on. You know, one of the things I was really jazzed about in anticipation for this show is like the Victorian setting, and I was really, really excited to see like Scott Wills' take on like, you know, 19th century London. Mm-hmm. You know, and I did note, like, I mean, the show's beautiful. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I love the backgrounds and everything, but I'm all I'm saying is I could tell it wasn't his. Mm-hmm. You know.
Do you know who is art director on it?
It is somebody he's worked with before. It's Richard Daskus. I think I'm saying that name right. So he was crew on Samurai Jack and I believe Titan as well. So, you know, it is a guy who has a history with Genndy, but this is his first time, I think, as the actual like head background painter, art director guy. Yeah. So in all the interviews I saw of Genndy too, like it didn't come up as to like why Scott's not doing it, but you know. So what else did you guys think about episode 2?
I just have in my notes the quote about the future has been altered, but there's still time.
Yeah.
And what that means.
Yeah, I want to know. So this is time is kind of a central theme in the show that we know nothing about yet.
Right.
You know, because like going back to the first one, like why is Copernicus in a grave? Mm-hmm. And for how long? Right. And no sign of Merlin in this episode anywhere. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Also, you know, so there are things happening. I'm very curious. Yeah, like what does that mean? It makes me go like the future has been altered. Like, are we going to see other like some of those warriors from the montage in the first episode? Like, are we going to get tangent episodes of some of these characters? Possibly. Characters further out in the future. Who knows? You know.
Right. No, because I had the thought of, you know, the future's been altered. Okay, so maybe there's a timeline change, but there's still time to change it. Is that what that means? Or does it mean like we can have, you know, again, like you said, the thing with Copernicus being the ground, I was kind of confused about that as well. Why that was a thing. If that was, because you would think you could have, you know, a pneumatic man just be, you know, you wouldn't necessarily have to have him in the ground unless, that was why I was confused with the parasol lady in the first one. Whether it was a thing where if you were able to, could she hijack what was going on and use it for her own purposes? Just because the fact that there was, you know, there was, it seemed to be a situation where she was trying to get to Copernicus, who was buried in the ground. But, you know, again, we don't know why or the how or, you know, who all would know that he was there in the first place. So,
right.
I mean, the thing in the story about this episode is that in the first episode, we had seen one awakening, Emma into Melinda, and it didn't go well. Right. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know what's happening. Is she one or the other? And then in this episode, we get 2 awakenings in Sang and Edred, and they both go fine. Yeah. Like they completely, like they're the old ones are back. And my question is, why not her? Mm-hmm. Because it was kind of when, like, I thought they were all going to go like she did. Yeah. Since that's the only thing we had seen in the first episode, and it's what the first episode was all about. I thought, like, oh yeah, like all of them are going to be having some issues, but the other 2 don't. So why? That's, I think, a mystery that, I mean, I think there is an answer to it. Just that we haven't gotten it yet, but it is a question that's certainly out there that it puts out there in the show.
Right.
I guess the other thing that we haven't touched upon is Winston yet, her fiance. Which man, I mean, like I'll tell you what, I mean, for a guy who doesn't have a lot of lines and a guy who doesn't have a lot of screen time, like
you have the soccer flashback,
right? Yeah, I mean, but man, I really buy like how much he loves Emma. Like he does like a really, really good time, like really, really good job getting that point across in the first 2 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, again, I think that's you know, that's the other thing that I got from Melinda and from what's the elf's name?
Edred.
Was we're, you know, in some ways we're getting a Carter Hall Shiera type situation where through every reincarnation prior everything was fine and they were together and they were in love or whatever, and then this for whatever reason in this time around, no. One or the other one's going to be like, no, I don't. You're not. I'm not who I'm. You know, I'm not Shiera. Because it happens in the books. In JSA, there's a point where the latest incarnation of Shire is just like, no, we're not together. We're not automatically together just because this is how it's been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was kind of interesting to, and again, another one of those, it feels somewhat familiar, to something I've seen before. But again, I don't know for sure if that's how that plays out because I haven't seen the next episode, but that was the vibe that I got was that.
No, but I mean, you're almost more brokenhearted for him because it's like his whole life is
sure
is uprooted by this thing. You know what I mean? And
right.
And like I said, like I think it's so effective and I mean, worth pointing out, I think too, like a testament to his performance. But worth pointing out that this show does not have a whole lot of recognizable names in the voice cast.
Yeah, I looked at that too. I was like, I don't think I know any of these people.
Yeah, I recognize one, which is Grey Delisle, who's Parasol Lady.
Okay,
who we're calling that. And she's worked with Genndy a lot. I mean, but she's in everything. I mean,
sure.
She's Daphne in Scooby Doo now.
Right. She's been in a million. Yeah, she's been great. She's been great in a million things.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We should say she's Grey Griffin in this one.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's right. Her name.
Formerly Grey
Formerly
Delisle,
Grey.
currently Grey Griffin.
Yeah,
gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, other than her, Brian George was the only other one that he was a character number 3 in episode 3, and he was one that I recognized from the sound of his voice because he's from Seinfeld,
right?
But yeah, I mean, I think that's cool too. I mean, not throwing on any shade at like the regulars voice actors that we get in a lot of things, but it is kind of cool getting a different take on things. It's a lot of British accents too, so I mean, it's
right.
to be understood.
Right. They actually got British people for it.
Yeah. All right, we will go to episode 3, but first, if you like the show, you can check out all of our episodes on letmeknowhowitis.com or wherever you get your podcast. Just please, however you find us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. And finally, if you want to suggest a topic, let us know in the comments, Twitter at LMKHII, or email at info@letmeknowhowitis.com. All right, so episode 3. So that one is titled A Fateful Encounter, and it opens with the same robotic drones from episode 1 attacking and taking control of a cargo ship carrying Greek artifacts headed for a British museum. Meanwhile, a Scotland Yard police investigator is commenting on the elephant attack from episode 2, and he doesn't believe that it's true magic. He thinks it's the work of parlor tricks. So he's announced a crackdown on spiritualists in the city. And this includes, he thinks, our heroes, who are the subject of like many, many wanted posters all over the city. Right. Melinda, meanwhile, returns to her home, and it triggers memories of her life as Emma. And she finds out Winston is still alive, but he's in the hospital. And so she puts on a blonde wig and one of her dresses, and she goes to visit Winston. But a nurse recognizes her as Melinda and notifies a nearby police officer. And they try to arrest her, but Melinda uses her powers to get away and ends up wrecking the ward in the hospital, like in the process. So Sang in the magic realm comes across a cat with 9 tails who he tries to interact with, but he notices a nearby explosion and believes it's related to Melinda. So back on Earth, he notifies Edred and Copernicus, and they go after her. Meanwhile, Melinda meets Darvish, an Indian spiritualist, and he claims he can rid her of whatever spirit is controlling her. So she offers him her engagement ring as payment. And inside his parlor, we see he's just a charlatan. And while he's doing his phony spiritual shtick, Melinda actually does go into a trance where Emma's soul meets Melinda's soul. And Melinda has no idea how Abel is able to fight her off, but instructs Emma that she needs to give in for like the greater good. And Emma instead just wants her life back and doesn't understand why Melinda can't possess somebody else. Then the other warriors find her, and then that's when the Greek warriors from the cargo ship attack, and the warriors fight them off. And after the fight, Sang spots the green-eyed woman from the previous episodes, and then the credits roll. And that's episode 3.
Okay.
So, Clifton, what did you notice for this one?
You misspoke on one thing. It was a 9-tailed fox, not a cat.
Ah, okay.
which is important because the nine-tailed fox is a famous motif throughout Chinese mythology and Eastern Asian mythology and folklore. It's usually a trickster spirit,
I was gonna say,
of sorts in those cultures, in their folklores.
Okay, right.
So that
Good
is
catch. Thank you.
So I think that is some foreshadowing there and telling us something important about something they're facing, about something adversarial that they're facing. That we'll find out more, because we don't find out what the deal is with the nine-tailed fox, other than it just keeps showing up and disappearing in that spirit world while Sang keeps looking for it and having to deal with other stuff that's going on in the episode. So I did think that was interesting.
Did you get a sense that this episode kind of how am I putting it? That like sort of the magical realm is sort of like over top the actual Earth realm, where sort of like that explosion that he sees and that he thinks is Melinda. It's like it appears at the same spot geographically on Earth as it does, right? Like he looks over to like where 12th Street would be, and there's an explosion there, right? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Right. It's like the upside down.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like so like he's able to look for her there. Like he goes into the magical realm and can kind of look for her, like where she is on Earth there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's for sure how it works, because you see her energy signature in the cosmic realm, and then he comes back and says, I found her, and then runs into a wall, because in the real world, there's a wall between between him and where the direction she's in. So, yeah, I think that's very much at play in there.
So that's a new nugget of information, because I did not really quite get that sense in the first two episodes.
Right, you thought they were just like out in space, some other random space somewhere, not like an astral plane exactly. Right. I did like how personal this one was to the story of Emma and Melinda, because like I said, that her awakening did not go as well as the others, and that we actually see like the straight up conflict when the quack medium actually does end up like somehow manifesting herself,
right.
And he's not real, like he's not a real mystic, but somehow like the Melinda does come out of Emma, and you end up with the two of them kind of split up conversing for a bit. I thought was a very nice scene, but I just overall like that the personal aspect where we're really getting to know Melinda, or Emma, I should say, actually a little more than Melinda at this point, because we're still in seeing what her life was like before the awakening messed everything up at her wedding for her. And yeah, it is interesting still that like we're getting all that with her, but the others, nope, like it's Edred's back and Sang's back and everything's fine. Yeah, they're not having that conflict between their hosts and their spirits. Which, going back to the description for the show, like I had not read the description beforehand, and in the description that I read back at the top of the show that talks about, it points out specifically that they're now in the bodies of teenagers instead of adults,
right?
Like they normally are, and I didn't quite catch that. For one, I was like, because Emma's getting married, I didn't realize she was a teenager. Alfie clearly is a teenager, like a younger teenager. Her, I would have placed more adult, but then I was like, oh yeah, like I guess in Victoria, if you weren't married by like 17,
right,
you were an old maid back then,
right.
So that makes sense there. But yeah, it's just not. I didn't think of them as teenagers. Certainly not like the Symbionic Titan characters who are clearly teenagers.
No, I didn't either. I'm with you too. Even Alfie, I thought like Alfie read more, like 11 to me, or younger, like a 9-year-old even.
Yeah.
But in that description that they make such a point in that series description to say, that they're teenagers instead of hosts. I was like, is that the conflict? Because we don't get that yet in the first episodes, because they are taking everything slow, methodically. But I was like, is that part of it, that like these just weren't like fully baked? Like Emma wasn't fully baked to be a host yet for some reason.
It might also be just the fact that I don't know. I mean, we don't know enough about the characters just yet to say what the conflict would be, but obviously right off the bat, the fact that two of them have a long-standing relationship that's now been, thrown off by the fact that she was about to be married to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I think you get a lot more mileage out of that hook than you do, the other ones. Right. I'm guessing. Again, we don't know. But again, that doesn't mean we won't have conflict or they won't be conflicted later on. Something with their characters. Again, we don't know what Alfie's background was before he was put in the orphanage, right?
Right.
So,
or he was hanging out with the Artful Dodger.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever he was up to.
Right. Yeah, we're not sure as of yet what that might all mean. So there could be. It might just be that this was the most compelling piece to get it running, and then once we get it running, we'll switch gears and see that, oh yeah, there's more to this.
It's also like a very confusing concept to put succinctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really like I thought about like how am I going to pitch the show to my wife? She's like, what's it about? Like, it's like, well,
mm-hmm. Right.
It's a lot. There's a lot there for sure. I agree. I don't know that press release like did it justice. And I guess of the three of us, like I had read the press release and I knew sort of what the slug lines to the show were gonna be.
Right.
And since this was announced in 2020, it was like, huh? What's this gonna like? What's the show about? Okay,
right.
and I'm in because it's Genndy, and I'll I watch just about everything he does. But yeah, like it was a head scratcher for sure, just hearing it that way, and watching it, I was kind of struck a little bit like man, it's been like 3 episodes, and really still like they're still clearly like taking their time developing a lot of stuff, and not in a bad way at all. But it did give me pause to think about like what this conversation is going to be like,
right?
Because so much of it is things developing and really. And they still continue to not hit you over the head with stuff at all. Like everything's just sort of like hinted at. Everything's conveyed either visually or through repetition, or just kind of like hinted at. Where like this is my take, this is my read on what's happening. Sort of like the cosmic realm and the earth realm thing,
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like, and it's shown for sure to back that up, but it's not explicitly said anywhere. Like nobody explains it that way.
Right.
Which I feel like other shows would do. Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because they would worry that you're not following along.
Right.
Yeah.
And it did become a point, like when I was looking up stuff for the show and I'm trying to find out who the voice actors are, and they're like, ancient Egypt sang is this guy and others sang is this guy. I'm like, which one am I looking for?
Right.
And it's kind of like that with every character. Like this Melinda's voiced by this, but this Melinda's that, and this Edred is this guy, unless it's this Edred, and then it's this other guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's kind of indicative of of how much, like how hard it was to kind of like sum up what this show is.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I was having to do work to find out who's even voicing the characters, because there's different versions of the characters and at different points in time.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of Genndy trying to sell it as a pitch.
Right.
Yeah.
Just the idea of trying to explain, wait. So they're throughout time, but they're not the same. Wait, start again. So yeah,
that's why it's taken him 25 years.
It'll make sense
to pitch it, since his days on Two Stupid Dogs, apparently.
Right.
I will say also, I mean, so far the action has been like, it's only been like one scene in every episode, right? Whereas I think in some cases we come to think of him on Jack and Primal and everything of like, wall-to-wall action a lot of times,
Right.
like these big, long fights and everything. And these fights are typically, just like the last couple of minutes of the episodes, and that's it.
For like the big fights, yeah. For the big fights, because we got like the smaller skirmish with Sang and the kids and the orphans in the second episode before getting the elephant zombie fight at the end.
Yeah. What do you think about the inspector? He's reoccurring? Think he's coming back?
Probably. You need that character. I feel like once that character's there, he's going to be around. The magic isn't real character.
I haven't even seen him, Zach, and I was like, that's a character that's going to stick around. That character has legs.
Right.
Just from the description of like, oh no, it's not real. It's all Charlotte and stuff. Yeah. I immediately was like, oh, for sure, we'll see that character again.
I do think it's kind of cool that the bad guy appears to be a woman here. Like, I mean, for all like, you know, the Megatron, the Skeletor of this show, you know, is a woman. And I think that that's kind of cool because, again, like, you don't see that often. Like, you know, you see Baroness and everything, but they're typically like side characters. But
did she, that was the thing I had a question about was, you know, I mean, like I said, Parasol Lady. Right. Did she have an animal profile? That was something I thought I saw in one quick like look, and I didn't go back to look at it. Was that when she turned in profile, she had it almost like an elongated snout. Did anyone else see that? I could be hallucinating. I don't know if that's it or not, but that was the other thing I thought I saw quickly, and then I just didn't revisit because I was watching the episode in a hurry. So whether we're dealing with some kind of creature, not something that's not that passes itself off as human, but clearly is from the magic realm.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a reveal that's already kind of made its way in some of the promos too. Oh,
again, it was one of those things where as soon as I knew we were going to review it, and just from the fact that I'm trying not to ruin stuff, I didn't look at anything for it. So yeah, I have no idea.
But I do think, like with her, not a whole lot to go on other than a visual, green eyes,
silhouette,
right? Green appears to be the color of evil in this show,
or magic,
right? Right? Correct. Which I keep thinking back to like when he was, in like the Samurai Jack special feature when he was pitching Jack and he was like, it's white versus black on red. And I just like, I really admire and love the way how he like kind of thinks in color. And I can't wait to see where that's going to go. The idea of green, whatever it means.
Right.
Because he's sure not to use it in any other spot, it's intentional. It's not to be confused with it in other places. That's for sure.
Right.
Anything else, Clifton?
Yeah. There's a couple things towards the end of episode really stuck out to me. I'll talk about one first, because we do get a lot of this episode, or not a lot, but some of this episode is that debate between Melinda and Emma, or between Emma and Melinda, where Emma's like, you're not, like, I'm not you, like, I'm me, and Melinda's, the energy that's supposed to happen, that's supposed to be reincarnated in Emma. And you get to that, like, the threat that's about to face at the end, which is the reanimated like Greek soldiers that they've turned into an army that's now about to attack London. And there's a moment where like Emma sees it and realizes like, oh, like I can't do anything about this without the Melinda power. And says like, she says, I hate you to, I guess, Melinda. But it's her like accepting, being like, okay, like I have to let you back in to save the day, is how I took it.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that a correct read on that scene?
Yeah, I think so.
Which I really liked that moment. I liked like her resignation, but like her angry resignation where she's like I have to do this, but I'm not happy about it, but it's the right thing to do. So like, I'll let you back in, Melinda. It was a really powerful little moment. And then on the lighter side, what was the bit about the sword and those statues? Zach, did you? So if my understanding is right, they implied that all of those statues were anatomically correct.
Yeah.
So Edred magically used his sword to censor them all.
Yeah.
To basically cut off the parts that might offend sensibilities of the time. So then you just had all these Greek statues with like
all these Ken dolls
broken off, like
lopped off bits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
That's how I took that.
Yeah. He does like an incantation to his sword. And the sword kind of flies off and just like, fing, 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 fing,
Right.
While he's blocking Emma's view from what's happening.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. But it made me go like, Why do you have to fight anything then?
Right.
Just
you could
send
have
the
just chopped
sword.
them all up. Yeah.
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 Apparently those parts were easier to cut off than the rest of.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
If you do go to Greek museums, though, it is like that a lot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
A lot of them broken off. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like overall, the episode, I really like that it was just like the emotional struggle of Emma to accept Melinda, and then by the end realize that like whatever's happening, she doesn't know what's happening.
Yeah.
But whatever this all is, like she does need Melinda. She does need to accept that part to get through whatever's going on in this crazy world.
The first episode, it's like they're blending a little bit more. Like the first episode, it was so stark as to like who was in the driver's seat, right? She was either like, I'm not Emma, and would, and fly off, or would have like moments of like her memory coming back to her and being conflicted. And now it's like, it's a lot more like she can kind of traverse it better. It looks like, you know what I mean? Where it's triggered by being at the old home, but then like you said, like, she like it reads like that's her using the powers and not the Melinda soul almost, right? So we'll see where it goes. See where it goes. I'm excited. I want to check it out some more. I know that we got probably, I think, like another 6 episodes to go, right? I think they picked it up for 10. I'm not quite sure exactly. But if you look it up, you have 10. You can find the titles pretty easily, which I try not to do that, but in looking for information for this, I trip over that, stuff while putting the notes together. So, that may just be 10 episodes in the first batch. We don't know. It's the Wild West out there now as far as streaming and stuff,
Enjoy it while it's here.
Right. I did check out, I was doing a refresher on the pilot on the on Adult Swim though, but like that video on YouTube has been watched like 2 million times.
Oh wow.
In 10 days. I'm like, well, that's a good sign. Like, so hopefully it's doing well.
Right.
Yeah, so any final thoughts before we go?
No, I want to check out the 3rd episode. Just like I said, just things got away from me. I didn't get a chance to check it out, but I do plan to. So,
and like we said, so if you listeners want to check it out, so it airs on Adult Swim Thursdays at midnight, Friday morning. That always confuses me, so I like to to say midnight going which way. And then it's also next day streaming on HBO Max or Max. So all right. So Unicorn Warriors Eternal. As always, we'll post links and examples to everything we talk about on letmeknowhowitis.com. There you can check out all of our past episodes or wherever you get your podcasts. Just please, however you find us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. We'll see you guys next week.